Richest 20 billionaires own the same wealth as 50% of the world's population, Indy 100 says. The prototype sneakers are a relic. Okay, that's a different one. He combined it.
On Tuesday, it starts with. On Tuesday, the Popular Business Magazine.
On Tuesday, the Popular Business Magazine released its annual list of world's wealthiest individuals and inadvertently shed light on the vast economic inequalities worldwide. One eye-catching statistic stood out. The combined wealth of just 20 of the world's top 20 billionaires featured $2.1 trillion, is greater than the wealth owned by the bottom 50% of the world population. As for the top 1% of Americans, they have combined net worth of $35.2 trillion. That's comparable to just over 30.4% of all household wealth in U.S. According to the data from Federal Reserve, global billionaire wealth has skyrocketed at an unprecedented rate since 1989. In addition, the pandemic has somehow allowed American billionaires to grow remarkably richer, such as Elon Musk, who became the world's fifth centa billionaire. That's 100 billion plus. August of 2020, crossing $100 billion benchmark. What are your thoughts on this?
Well,
tell us.
I want to set up my friend John Stossel here, my new friend. And John Stossel, actually, he has his own YouTube channel. It's called Stossel TV, if I'm correct. Awesome. Usually clips under 10 minutes on hard-hitting topics. And John Stossel did an entire episode on wealth inequality. Did you not?
I've done several.
I've done several, he said, but one is pretty poignant. And he said, here's some of the stats. He said the worldwide population over the last 40 years, 1 billion people have risen out of poverty. Here in America, the richest Americans have increased their wealth by 200%, where the poorest Americans have increased their wealth by 32%. So I'm going to make a point, and then I'm going to hand this over to you. So I think the problem is, number one, let's just applaud that wealth inequality, that the 1 billion people have gotten out of poverty. I think that's a huge headline that gets sort of pushed to the side because people want to focus on the headlines. You know, in the news world, they say don't bury the lead. The lead is 20 billionaires are richer than 50% of the world. That's ridiculous. What they won't say is, well, the world in itself, the poorest of the poor are getting richer. So the rich are getting richer, but the poor aren't necessarily getting poorer. Is that right?
Though we hear that the rich got richer and the poor got poorer, it's bullshit. The poor got 30% over 40 years, richer too. And the middle class is disappearing, but more of them are moving into the higher classes. It's just the media is horrible at making everything seem worse than it is. And they do relate. The billionaires, it's a tournament world, the free market world. And the Freakonomics guys had a chapter on why the crack dealer is living with his mother still. But at the top of the chain of the crack dealers, there was a very rich guy, and the average soldier wasn't making much money. But presumably he was taking that risk to do this illegal thing because he was making a little more than he would have otherwise. And in America now we're acting as if it's a bad thing if somebody gets filthy rich while other people only get a little richer. But that's what's going to happen when people are free. And it's the only system that allows people to get richer. Because for most of history, for thousands and thousands of years, everybody was poor. It was only in the last 200, 300 years that GDP has shot up. And not 1 billion, but many billions have been lifted out of poverty. And poverty, as the UN defines it, is living on $1 or $2 a day. It's stoop labor. It's very awful. And the same system that makes Bezos absurdly rich has trickled down, if that's the terrible word, to those people. And I'm not even counting how much their lives are better off because Apple invented stuff like this, iPhones, and that makes a poor person's life richer.
Of course, and I think income tends to be equal when everybody is poor. So I know you have very strong feelings about this, Pat. You've done episodes about this. What are your thoughts?
I mean, listen, it's very basic for me. Kai, can you pull up on the big screen compound interest rule of 72 and showing what happens if just put compound interest rule of 72. You know what? Matter of fact, go to type that. Let's see what comes up. Examples. I'm just curious here. Go to images. Let's see what comes up under images. You know, the chart that shows if you make an investment in different okay, go to the first one, rule of 72. Go to the first one. Let's see how blurry it is. It's a little too blurry. Okay, there you go. Okay, so if you look at that, here's what you'll notice. If the average person takes $10,000 and they get 1.5% interest rate, okay, you put that at a rule of 72, it's going to take roughly, so 2 would be 36, 48 years for the $10,000 to double to $20,000. At 3%, that same person, same amount of money, they put in 3%, say fixed annuity or a T-bill, maybe not today's T-bill, but let's just say something you put it in that pays you 3%, that's going to be $40,000 48 years later. The 6% is going to have $160,000. The 12% is going to have $2.56 million. Look at the difference between 6 and 12%, Adam. Look at 6, look at 12. At 6, you're going to have $160,000 48 years later. At 12, you're going to have $2.56 million. I asked John, I said, John, how come you're not moving to Florida? John says he loves Del Rey. He's about to go. You're gonna play a very, very high quality competitive volleyball today, right?
Beach volleyball and low quality competitive.
He only plays with the girls.
Some tells me he's going to be competing.
He's a very smart man. He says, I'll be the one guy, I'll be setting the girls up. I'm the bumper, and the girls will be the spikers.
So I asked, I said, so how come you're not moving to Florida? At this phase, it's just not something that's something that's a big deal to want to move over. Why? Because he's probably had compound interest on his side over the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So most of America, most of the world doesn't put their money to work for them. Most of the world, if you look at the most basic, simple, this is not saying $10,000 a year. This isn't saying $10,000 a month. This is saying $10,000, you leave it, you set it there, you don't touch it for 48 years, you got $2.56 million. Let's just say you put that in a fund like Investment Company Act of America. That's a American funds. They started, I think, in 1934, and their average return they talk about over lifespan is 12+%. Say it's 12%, say it's 10%. You got more money. So when we're talking about, the richest 20 billionaires are worth more than the bottom 50%. Yeah, the richest billionaires have their equity working for them. They typically own a piece of a company. They typically have compound interest on their side. And unfortunately, the bottom 50% of the world is not educated on how money works. Why are they? I don't know. All these people, all our politicians, all the politicians in New York who yesterday AOC came out and imposing the fact that we got to make a bigger aggressive push on climate change, and they're trying to push Joe Biden because Joe Biden the other day flipped. He kind of apologized a little bit and they changed their approach because they were worried that AOC and those guys were going to come after them. If AOC, if Elizabeth Warren, if these folks are so worried about the poor of America, why don't you educate them about the basics of how money works? Why don't you try to get them out of being poor? Why keep them there?
They don't know.
They don't know how money works.
AOC doesn't understand.
AOC certainly doesn't.
I wouldn't disagree with you.
But Elizabeth Warren does. She's written a book on this. Has she not?
She understands it. But the point is, do they really want them to stop being poor? Do you really want them to stop being poor?
That opens up another can of worms.
Which is what?
What do they really want? Do they want to keep them in that poor mentality and
I don't know.
rail against the rich?
Oh, come on. That's too paranoid. You're being crazy here. They want to help people too, these stupid leftists.
You think so?
Yes.
You think they do? What a sweet, sentimental guy you are, John.
I think they are misguided, but I think they really want to help.
Okay, I think you're worried about going back to New York, and you want to make sure they let you back in because you want to go see your wife. I can respect that.
Well, back to the initial point is I think the stat is 55% of Americans, because we're in America here. I get that we have an international audience.
Tequila there, just so you know about it. I just want you to know, 3,500, that tequila's coming up, and John's eyeing it as well. Go ahead,
you eyeing that tequila like me?
Keep
All
going.
Right, shout out to The Rock. But anyway, my point is 55% of Americans are invested in the stock market.
Yeah.
So basically, flip a coin whether you're invested in the stock market or not. I know that John has obviously done very well in the stock market, as of you, and I had to learn the hard way. I'm like, all right, what the hell is this? But I actually just did an episode on valuetainment economics about investing, and I said compound interest is your homie, he's your amigo, he's your compadre, right? And if you're not investing in the stock market or in Bitcoin or in what have you, even real estate for that matter, you're not gonna get the magical effect of compound interest. And I think Einstein once said that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Those who understand it earn it, those who don't, do not get it. So but back to the initial point about the billionaire and the million, so something that we've all learned this past year is the K-shaped economy. The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, which John so pointedly pointed out,
Yep.
that they're actually not getting poor. They're just not getting as rich. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to emotion. And the emotion is sort of the crab mentality. You familiar with the crab mentality, that if you have a bucket of crabs and one tries to get its way out, one will pull its way down? So I don't think people are upset with like the Bezos of the world or the Musks of the world, the entrepreneurs, the guys building businesses. I think what they're upset about, for lack of a better word, are the freaking douchebags with the 4 yachts and the 7 mansions.
What are you talking? You live in the.
I know.
I live
in the capital of douchebags.
You party with.
I do, and believe me, those guys go
So
on their yachts.
you're not going to go on the next yacht party?
I'm going on their yacht. I'm good, but I'm just saying,
This
people.
guy. He was just on a yacht last week.
I was, but the problem is people that don't get those invites on the yacht are like,
Baker
fuck those
Mayfield.
guys. Fuck. So there's the hater mentality. I'm saying
Yeah.
that people are haters.
I see.
Do you not think that people are haters, especially of the rich, at the end of the day?
Yeah, and if the guy on the yacht cheated to get there,
Ooh.
then I hate him.
Okay, like the Madoffs of the world. Hello?
Yeah.
Ponzi schemers.
They deserve to be held accountable. So, but your question is the 20 billionaires being where they are, the top 20 having
Yes.
more than 50% of world population. Does that bother you? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, look at who are the top 20 billionaires? Elon Musk, Jeff
Zuck.
Bezos, Zuck. People.
Ellison.
By the way, 25% of the people like Zuck. 75% do not like Zuck. By the way, Buffett. Who's the guy? LVMH.
Louis Vuitton guy.
Louis
Yep.
Vuitton.
I think this is a compound interest issue, and it's an education issue. It's that simple. Listen, when I was growing up in a family where my dad was working at a 99-cent store, my parents got a divorce, and I'm living in a one-bedroom place with my mom and my sister off of Doran.
Yeah.
We had no money. We had no clue what the hell we were doing. No one in my family ever owned an insurance policy or 401. I've never lived in a house before. So guess how much compound interest we had. Eventually, the money my grandpa gave my mom eventually ran out. And when she ran out of money, guess what she did? She went straight back to Iran, is what she did. Because we didn't know how money worked. And when money ran out, she went back to Iran, and I joined the army. I had no clue how money worked. Then I went into the army. I got out. I met a girl, Janvier. She worked at Morgan Stanley Deanwood. She told me, you ought to get into financial services. I said, I have no clue what Morgan Stanley Deanwood is. I was 21. Long story short, I get hired. When I get hired and I learn that I got my Series 7, then I sat there and I said, this makes a lot of sense. Why don't more people know about the basics of money? Not even the technical, how a T-bond works versus a variable annuity, all basic stuff that people don't even know about how money works. So maybe invest a little bit more into education about money. If we actually want to get people to be out of it, educate them about how money works, get people to be encouraged to go into compound interest, have your money working for you, and see what happens to you long term. May not be a bad idea to go read. I bet these 20 billionaires, they probably have a book out there about how they did it. Why don't you go read that book? So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.